Atop a towering hill that pierces the grey clouds of Portugal's Sintra region, there stands a castle that has long been shrouded in eerie mystery and unsettling tales. The Peena Palace, its vibrant hues of red, yellow and orange, starkly contrasting the dense fog that often envelopes it, has become one of the most haunted landmarks in Europe. There are those who claim to have felt the palace's chilling presence long before stepping foot inside. Legends whisper of the spirits who never left, of the palace's haunted halls, and of the strange occurrences that have been witnessed by visitors and locals alike. Some say that once you enter, you are never the same. The first thing anyone notices about Peena Palace is its striking appearance. It stands on a hill that is often covered in a blanket of mist, giving it an almost ethereal presence. The bright colours of the palace, vivid reds, deep yellows and emerald greens, stand out sharply against the dark backdrop of the forest that surrounds it. But as daylight fades, the place transforms. What once seems like a vibrant testament to Portugal's royal history now becomes something far darker. The mist thickens, and the palace begins to look like a looming fortress, its jagged spires rising like the fingers of a claw, ready to seize anyone who dares to venture too close. For years there have been reports of people who, after visiting the palace, have spoken of strange, unnerving experiences. Some speak of hearing the distant sound of footsteps echoing down empty corridors, footsteps that seem to appear from nowhere. Others have claimed to see shadowy figures moving in the windows, figures that vanish the moment you approach. There have been tales of people being brushed by an unseen hand, their hearts pounding in their chests as they feel an invisible presence creeping ever closer. A particularly eerie legend involves the ghost of a woman dressed in a flowing white gown seen wandering the castle's long hallways at night. She is said to appear only during the darkest hours, gliding silently through the grand chambers. Visitors who have encountered her describe the woman as having an ethereal, almost transparent quality, as if she were not entirely of this world. Some claim to have heard her voice, a whisper, soft and mournful, echoing through the halls, a voice that tells of deep sorrow and longing. The most terrifying aspect of the palace's haunted history, however, lies not in its spirits, but in its inexplicable phenomena. People who have dared to explore the hidden chambers of Peena Palace report being overwhelmed by an unbearable sense of dread, the air growing thick and suffocating. There have been tales of people being inexplicably drawn into a deep dark part of the castle, a place from which they could not find their way out. One chilling tale recounts a man who visited the palace during the night, desperate to uncover the secrets hidden within its walls. As he wandered deeper into the bowels of the castle, the atmosphere grew heavier and he could feel his breath becoming shallow. He had heard rumors of the mysterious forbidden rooms in the depths of the palace, rooms no one was supposed to enter. His curiosity overtook him, and he found himself at the entrance to a narrow cobweb-filled corridor. Ignoring the intense feeling of dread that gripped him, he ventured inside. The further he went, the darker it became, until his lantern flickered and went out, leaving him in absolute darkness. A low, guttural sound echoed through the stone walls, sending chills down his spine. The man spun around, his heart racing, but saw nothing. However, a presence seemed to watch him from the shadows, and then the whispering began. Soft at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. It was as if the very walls of the castle were speaking to him, urging him to turn back, to leave before it was too late. But it was too late. The man fled down the corridor, but it seemed to stretch on endlessly, the walls closing in around him. The whispers became screams, agonizing, guttural screams that seemed to come from all directions. The man ran until he could run no more, collapsing to the floor, unable to escape the grasp of whatever haunted that place. That when his body was later found, lifeless and trembling, his eyes were wide with terror, his face frozen in an expression of fear that would haunt those who discovered him for years to come. But the horror surrounding Peena Palace is not confined to the restless spirits of the dead. There is a curse that seems to haunt the very stones of the palace itself. The curse is said to be linked to the very construction of the palace. Legend has it that the original owner, King Ferdinand II, was warned by a powerful seer that the palace would bring misfortune and tragedy to anyone who dared to live there. The king, skeptical but intrigued, ignored the warning and went ahead with the construction, believing that such superstitions had no bearing on the real world. The curse began to manifest almost immediately after the palace was completed. The king's reign was marked by a series of unfortunate events, from the sudden death of his closest advisors to a series of ill-timed battles and the loss of his most treasured possessions. But it was the strange disappearances that began to occur within the palace that truly solidified its reputation for being cursed. Guests who stayed in the palace at night often reported hearing strange noises, scraping sounds from the walls, like nails being dragged along the stone, or the faint sound of children crying in the distance. There were also reports of doors slamming shut on their own, of windows opening and closing without explanation, and of cold spots appearing in rooms where no draught should have existed. But the most terrifying of all was the unexplained vanishing of guests. No one could explain why people would enter the palace and never be seen again. Some believe that they were taken by the spirits that haunt the palace, while others think that they may have fallen victim to the curse that has lingered over the place for centuries. One such mysterious disappearance occurred in the early 20th century when a prominent English nobleman, Sir Alistair Pembroke, arrived at Peena Palace. He was known for his fascination with the paranormal and had long been intrigued by the rumours surrounding the palace. Armed with a camera and a notebook, he spent several days exploring the palace, documenting his findings. However, after a final ominous entry in his journal, Sir Alistair vanished without a trace. His belongings were found neatly packed in his room, but there was no sign of the man himself. Many believe that Sir Alistair uncovered the darkest secret of the palace, an ancient, hidden room beneath the castle that is said to house the source of its curse. But whatever he found in those depths drove him mad, or perhaps claimed his life. The room, according to some, is still sealed, its location known only to a select few. They say that whoever dares to enter that room will be consumed by the curse, their souls trapped within the walls forever, forced to wander in the same ghostly state as the spirits that haunt the palace. The legends surrounding Peena Palace are so deeply entrenched in the folklore of Portugal that they continue to shape the experiences of anyone who dares to visit. Tourists, explorers, and thrill-seekers still come to the castle, hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural. Many leave with only their disbelief to rely on, while others leave with their lives changed forever. A recent visitor, an American tourist named Claire, recounts her eerie encounter during a midnight tour of the palace. She was exploring the halls, her footsteps echoing off the stone floors, when she suddenly heard someone whisper her name. "Claire!" It was soft, almost like a breeze in the dark. Startled, she spun around, but there was no one there. Terrified but determined, she continued her exploration, only to feel the temperature drop drastically as she approached a large set of wooden doors. When she opened them, the sight before her was unlike anything she could explain. The room was bathed in an unnatural glow, the walls covered in symbols she couldn't understand, symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. A shadowy figure stood in the center of the room, its face obscured, but its presence overpowering. Claire tried to step back, but the door slammed shut, trapping her inside. The figure moved toward her, and in that moment Claire understood that this was no ordinary ghost. It was something far more ancient, a being bound to the palace for eternity. With a scream, she ran from the room, but as she turned to escape, the door opened on its own, as if allowing her to leave. She didn't look back as she fled the palace, and she never spoke of what she saw to anyone again. Peena Palace remains a place of legend, its halls echoing with the whispers of the past. For those who seek answers, the truth may be far more terrifying than they could ever imagine. The spirits of the dead linger within, and the curse of the palace ensures that its mysteries will remain unsolved, its horrors never-ending. The Peena Palace, perched high atop a hill in the mystical region of Sintra, Portugal, has been a subject of both awe and fear for centuries. The beauty of the palace, with its eccentric architectural style and vibrant colours, makes it one of the most iconic landmarks in Portugal. Yet, for all its beauty, it hides a much darker side, one that is steeped in legends, ghost stories, and eerie experiences that have plagued it since its construction. The swirling fog that envelops the hill upon which the palace sits often transforms it from a picturesque monument into something far more sinister, as if the very air around it is thick with the weight of its secrets. When night falls, the castle appears to come alive, casting long, unsettling shadows that stretch across the land. The castle's very design seems to have been crafted with a sense of grandeur, but beneath the beauty there is an undeniable aura of unease. The walls, once vibrant with life, seem to pulse with a life of their own. It's as if the palace itself holds its breath, waiting for someone to unlock the untold mysteries hidden within its stone halls. This is the fabled to show us about. Visitors who come to marvel at its magnificence often find themselves walking with a sense of foreboding, an inexplicable dread that grows stronger as they explore the darkened corridors and empty chambers. It's not just the history of the place that causes unease, it's something else, something more unsettling that seems to be lurking in the shadows. There are countless stories about strange occurrences that have taken place within the palace. Tourists have recounted chilling tales of feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched, even when they were alone. Some have felt cold gusts of wind when the air was still, and others have claimed to hear footsteps echoing behind them, only to turn around and find the hallways empty. It's as if the spirits of the past are still very much present, wandering the halls, waiting for someone to notice them. But it isn't just the atmosphere that gives Peena Palace its chilling reputation, it's the legends that have been passed down for generations. One such legend tells of a mysterious figure, a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, who roams the halls of the palace. Those who have seen her describe her as eerily beautiful, but there's something unnerving about her presence. She is said to appear at night, gliding silently through the rooms, her footsteps never echoing on the stone floors. Some claim she is the ghost of one of the palace's former inhabitants, trapped within its walls for eternity. Others believe she is the manifestation of the grief and sorrow that has clung to the castle for centuries. One of the most chilling encounters with this spectral figure occurred in the early 1900s. A young couple visiting the palace for their honeymoon decided to take a late-night stroll through the gardens. The mist had rolled in from the valley, blanketing the palace in an almost otherworldly silence. As they walked, they noticed a figure in the distance, a woman in white, standing at the entrance of the palace. At first they thought it was a trick of the light, or perhaps a shadow cast by the trees, but as they approached, the figure remained perfectly still, staring at them with hollow, vacant eyes. When they finally reached the figure, she vanished before their eyes. The couple, frightened but determined to find an explanation, returned to the palace the next night. They ventured into the palace's grand hall, where they once again saw the woman in white standing at the far end of the room. This time they approached cautiously, but the figure turned to face them with an unsettling smile. The room grew cold, and the woman vanished once again, leaving the couple in a state of shock. Neither of them could explain what they had seen, but they both knew that they would never return to the palace after that night. But the tales of ghostly figures don't end there. There are numerous accounts from those who have stayed in the palace's guest rooms, only to wake in the middle of the night to find the temperature plummeting and the shadows around them shifting unnaturally. One man, an avid paranormal investigator, decided to spend the night in one of the most secluded rooms of the palace, hoping to uncover some of its dark secrets. Equipped with his camera and ghost hunting equipment, he set out to document any strange occurrences that might take place. As the night wore on, the investigator began to feel a sense of dread slowly creeping over him. He could hear the faintest whispers, as though people were speaking just beyond his reach. The temperature in the room dropped, and the air became thick with an oppressive feeling that made it hard to breathe. Then he saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, its form barely visible in the dim light. The figure was tall and slender, but its features were obscured by a heavy cloak that seemed to flutter in an invisible wind. The investigator's heart raced as he reached for his equipment, but the figure disappeared before he could capture a single image. As the investigator attempted to leave the room, the door slammed shut with a deafening crash. He struggled to open it, but it remained firmly locked. Desperate, he tried to calm his nerves, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they became an overwhelming cacophony of voices. He could hear his name being called, but each time he turned around there was no one there. The door finally opened, and he bolted from the room, swearing never to return to the cursed palace again. These experiences are not isolated. There are many others who have had similar encounters with the inexplicable, from hearing doors creak open in the middle of the night to feeling a cold hand brush against their skin when no one was nearby. The palace's corridors are said to stretch on for eternity, as if they were designed to confuse and trap anyone who dares to explore them. Episodes drawing on many tales to explain the strange sensations of the experimental patient. Some claim that they've gotten lost in the halls, unable to find their way out, even though they've been inside the palace countless times before. But perhaps the most disturbing tale is that of the Room of Echoes, a hidden chamber deep within the palace that no one has dared to enter for centuries. The room is said to be cursed, its walls covered in strange symbols and markings that no one has been able to decipher. Those who have ventured too close to the room have reported hearing whispers coming from within, whispers that seem to beckon them inside. But no one has ever returned from that room to tell the tale. There are those who believe that the palace itself is alive, that it feeds off the fear and anxiety of those who enter its walls. The presence of the spirits that haunt it is a constant reminder that the past is never truly gone. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper in the dark, every shadow that moves on its own is a manifestation of the palace's dark and twisted history. It is as if the very essence of the palace is consumed by the supernatural energy that lingers within its walls, growing stronger with each passing day. For centuries, Peena Palace has stood as a symbol of both grandeur and terror. The whispers of its past continue to echo through its halls, and the ghosts of those who once called it home continue to roam the castle's endless corridors. To visit the palace is to step into a world where the line between the living and the dead is blurred, where the past and present collide, and where the very air seems to pulse with a malevolent energy. Those who are brave enough to enter its haunted halls will find themselves questioning the very nature of reality as they experience firsthand the horrors that lie within. In the end, Peena Palace remains an enigma, its beauty forever tainted by the darkness that resides within it. It is a place where the past is never truly gone, and where the spirits of the dead continue to roam, waiting for the next soul foolish enough to enter. The palace stands as a reminder that some places are best left undisturbed, for once the horrors of Peena Palace are unleashed, there is no escaping them. And those who enter may never leave. The night grows colder as the moonlight dances upon the spires and turrets of Peena Palace, casting long, sinister shadows across its grand stone walls. The fog rolls in thick, enveloping the palace in a supernatural mist, distorting its once majestic form into something far more ominous. As you stand at the entrance, you can feel a chill deep within your bones, as if the very air around you is infused with an ancient, lingering dread. This is not just a palace of kings and queens. but a place that holds the dark, restless souls of those who once inhabited it, souls that will not rest until their stories are told. The legends surrounding the palace are many, but they all share one common theme: the feeling of being watched. For years, visitors and staff alike have reported an eerie sensation, as though invisible eyes are constantly observing their every move. Some say that the spirits of past inhabitants still roam the halls, unwilling to let go of the life they once knew. Others speak of an unsettling presence that lingers just beyond the edge of sight, a shadow that creeps into your mind, filling it with visions of despair and sorrow. The stories of the palace supernatural activity have persisted for centuries, and many of them center around a particular room, the royal chapel. It is said that late at night, when the wind howls through the castle's towers, the faint sound of chanting can be heard echoing from within its sacred walls. Those brave enough to venture inside claim to have witnessed strange phenomena, such as flickering candles that never seem to burn out, and the unmistakable scent of incense that fills the air, even though no one is present to light it. Some have reported seeing shadowy figures standing at the altar, their faces obscured, their bodies shrouded in darkness. There are those who believe that the royal chapel is cursed, a place where dark rituals were performed centuries ago. They say that the spirits of those who were sacrificed in the name of power still haunt the chapel, forever bound to the palace. The walls of the chapel, they claim, are soaked with the blood of innocent victims, their screams still reverberating through the stone. They say that the spirits of those who were sacrificed in the name of power still haunt the chapel and are soaked with the blood of innocent victims, their screams still reverberating through the stone. It is here, in the heart of Peena Palace, that the veil between the living and the dead is said to be thinnest, where the spirits of the past continue to walk among the living, their presence a constant reminder of the darkness that once consumed the palace. But the chapel is not the only place within the palace where the supernatural reigns. The corridors of Peena Palace are said to be alive with the whispers of those who have long since passed, the sound of footsteps echoing through the hallways, the creaking of doors that should be locked tight, the soft, mournful sighs that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. All of these have been reported by those who have spent time in the palace after dark. Many visitors have claimed to feel an unexplainable presence behind them, as though someone is walking just a few steps away, but when they turn, no one is there. And it's not just the living who have felt this presence. Even the animals that live within the palace grounds have been said to act strangely, barking or meowing at thin air, as though they are aware of something the human eye cannot see. One particular account stands out, a tale passed down through generations of the palace's staff. It is said that a young maid employed at the palace many years ago was tasked with cleaning the royal chambers late one night. She was alone in the room sweeping the floors when she suddenly felt a cold, clammy hand touch her shoulder. Spinning around, she found herself face to face with a tall figure dressed in a flowing white gown. The figure, with hollow, lifeless eyes, stood in silence, its mouth twisted into a faint smile. The maid screamed and ran, but the figure followed her, its footsteps echoing in her ears, growing louder and louder until she could no longer hear anything else. She fled through the palace's corridors, her heart racing in fear. But when she reached the main hall, the figure had vanished. Terrified and trembling, the maid fled the palace, never to return again. But the stories of the spirits that haunt Peena Palace do not end with ghostly figures. There are also tales of dark shadows that seem to move of their own accord, slithering across the walls and floors, disappearing as soon as they are noticed. Some say that these shadows are not of this world, but are the manifestations of something far darker, a force that has taken residence within the palace itself. It is as though the very walls of Peena Palace are alive with an ancient malevolent energy, a force that feeds off the fear of those who enter. Visitors to the palace have also reported hearing strange noises in the dead of night, whispers that seem to come from nowhere, the soft rustling of clothing, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps, even when no one is around. The palace's halls are said to echo with the sounds of a bygone era, as though the ghosts of the past are reliving their final moments over and over again. It is not uncommon for guests to feel a sense of dread when walking through the palace's halls, as if something is watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Peena Palace is the sense of isolation that pervades the air. The palace, with its towering walls and towering spires, seems to rise out of the fog like a giant sentinel, its windows dark and empty, its doors locked tight against the outside world. Once inside, it feels as though time has stopped. The echoes of the past seem to hang in the air, and the walls close in around you, creating a sense of claustrophobia that is impossible to shake. It is as if the palace itself is a living, breathing entity, watching over all who enter, its dark secrets hidden behind every corner, in every shadow. For centuries, the palace has stood as a monument to both beauty and terror. Its vibrant exterior belies the darkness that lurks within, and its walls hold the secrets of 1,000 lives, some of which were lost to tragedy, while others were taken by the supernatural forces that call the palace home. As you wander through the winding corridors, your every step seems to be met with a faint whisper, a subtle rustle of clothing, or the flicker of a shadow. Read, the air grows colder, heavier, as though something is drawing closer, something that does not wish to be seen. The more you learn about the secrets of Peena Palace, the more you realize that it is not just a place of beauty and history. It is a place of darkness, where the past refuses to die, where the spirits of the dead linger, seeking to make their presence known. For those who dare to visit, the palace offers no peace. Its halls are filled with echoes of a bygone era, its rooms a labyrinth of lost souls, and its walls a testament to the terror that has plagued the place for centuries. As the wind howls through the towers, and the moon casts its pale light upon the palace's haunting exterior, you cannot help but feel that you are being watched, that you are not alone, that something is waiting for you in the shadows, something that has been waiting for a very long time. The longer you linger in the palace, the more oppressive the atmosphere becomes. With every footstep you take, the stone floors seem to groan in protest, as if the castle itself is alive, watching and judging you. The halls become more labyrinthine, twisting and turning in ways that make it impossible to find your bearings. What was once familiar now feels foreign and threatening, as though the palace has been waiting for you to make a mistake, to wander just a little too far into the heart of its dark secrets. As the shadows grow longer, they stretch and twist in unnatural ways, reaching out like fingers, eager to grasp at anyone who dares to step into the unknown. Those who have stayed too long in Peena Palace often speak of feeling a cold, oppressive weight in the air, a sense that something unseen is lurking just out of sight, watching their every move. The more you try to shake the feeling, the stronger it becomes, and soon it becomes impossible to ignore. The whispers, faint at first, begin to grow louder, until they fill the air with an almost deafening cacophony. They seem to come from all directions, swirling around you like a storm, their words indecipherable, yet filled with a chilling sense of urgency. It is as though the very walls of the castle are trying to communicate something, to warn you of the dangers that lie ahead. But no matter how hard you listen, the message remains unclear, leaving you with nothing but a sense of dread that gnaws at your soul. Some visitors, unable to bear the pressure of the castle's haunting presence, flee in terror, but others, drawn in by the lure of the unknown, press on, They move deeper into the heart of the palace, seeking answers to the questions that have been plaguing them. But the further they go, the more the castle reveals its true nature, a dark, malevolent force that has been waiting for centuries, patiently biding its time. The deeper you venture, the more the castle seems to change, its corridors becoming more twisted and distorted, its walls pulsating with a strange, otherworldly energy. It is as if the very fabric of reality is being torn apart, and the palace is at the center of it all. Those who have dared to explore the lower levels of the palace speak of vast underground chambers, long forgotten by time, where the air is thick with the smell of decay and the remnants of long-dead creatures. The walls here are lined with strange symbols and markings, carved into the stone by hands long since turned to dust. Some believe these markings are warnings, left behind by those who once lived here. But others claim they are part of a ritual, a dark and ancient ceremony meant to summon something far worse than any mortal could imagine. As you stand in these chambers, the sense of unease grows stronger, and it feels as though something is watching you from the darkness. You can hear the faint rustling of movement, but when you turn to look, there is nothing there. It is only when you turn back, as your eyes adjust to the dim light, that you see the shadows. Shapes moving just out of the corner of your vision, flickering in and out of existence like fleeting glimpses of a nightmare. They seem to be getting closer, and the air grows colder with every passing second. Suddenly, a distant sound echoes through the palace, an unearthly wail rising from deep within the bowels of the castle. It is a sound unlike anything you have ever heard, filled with pain, sorrow, and madness. It seems to reverberate through every stone of the castle, shaking the very foundations. Those who have heard it claim that it is the cry of the spirits, trapped within the walls of the palace, eternally cursed to wander its halls in search of release. But no one has ever been able to explain what it truly is, and no one has ever dared to venture deep enough into the castle to find out. For those who remain in the palace long enough, the boundaries between reality and nightmare begin to blur. Time itself seems to lose all meaning, and the castle twists and shifts, becoming a place where nothing is certain. The halls stretch on forever, and the rooms seem to change when you're not looking. The past and the present become intertwined, and the spirits of those who once inhabited the palace seem to be walking alongside you, whispering secrets in your ear, urging you to uncover the truth. But at what cost? It is said that those who spend too much time in Peena Palace begin to lose their sense of self. The longer you stay, the more you begin to feel as though you are becoming part of the castle itself. Your thoughts become clouded and your movements slow, as though the very air around you is thick with some invisible weight. Some speak of a feeling of being drawn into the palace's dark heart, unable to resist the pull of its malevolent energy. They describe a sensation of being trapped in a never-ending cycle, doomed to wander the halls for all eternity, never finding an escape. The only way to truly escape the clutches of the palace, it is said, is to leave before it's too late, to run before the spirits and the dark forces within the walls claim you as their own. But for many, this is easier said than done. Once you enter the palace, it is as though it has already claimed you, its grip tightening with every passing hour. The whispers grow louder, the shadows more menacing, and the sense of dread more suffocating. And no matter how fast you run, the castle will always be waiting, lurking in the darkness, ready to pull you back into its depths. As the night finally reaches its darkest hour and the castle looms ominously in the distance, you can't help but feel that you've crossed a line, one that can never be uncrossed. The mysteries of Peena Palace are far deeper and darker than you could ever have imagined, and as you stand at its gates, you realize that the true horror is not what you can see, but what lies hidden in the shadows, waiting for the next soul to wander into its grasp. In that moment, you understand the true cost of curiosity. of seeking out the dark, of digging too deep into the secrets of the past. For there are some things that are better left forgotten, things that should never be uncovered, no matter how tempting it may seem. And the spirits of Peena Palace will ensure that those who dare to enter will never forget the terror that waits within its walls. The deeper you venture into the palace, the more it seems to transform. The walls, once adorned with ornate carvings and symbols, now appear jagged and raw, as though they were never meant to be seen. The floors creak underfoot, but it's no longer the sound of age or neglect. There's something more, something darker, as if the palace itself is alive, breathing with an ancient, malevolent force. In the distance, a door creaks open, as if inviting you to come closer. But you hesitate. You know better than to follow the beckoning sound, and yet your feet seem to move of their own accord, drawn towards the door. When you reach it, the heavy wooden door groans as it swings open, revealing a dimly lit room. As you step inside, a sense of unease washes over you. The room feels colder, much colder than the rest of the palace. The air is thick, charged with an energy you can't quite explain, but it's impossible to ignore. Shadows seem to dance on the walls, moving in ways that defy logic. Your breath comes in shallow gasps as you move further into the room, and that's when you see it. At the far end of the room, standing in the shadows, is a figure that doesn't belong. It's almost as if the figure is a part of the very darkness, woven into its fabric. The shape is tall, cloaked in a flowing black garment, its features obscured by a hood that casts its face in shadow. The figure doesn't move, but it feels as though it's watching you, observing you, waiting for something. Your heart races, your pulse quickens, and you know that you shouldn't be here, you should leave. But your legs refuse to move. Suddenly, the room seems to grow smaller, as if the walls themselves are closing in on you. The figure begins to move, but not like a normal person. It glides, as if floating just above the floor, its movements smooth and eerie like something unnatural. The air grows colder, the temperature dropping drastically, and you feel an intense pressure in your chest, as if the weight of the entire castle is bearing down on you. The figure moves closer, and the shadows around it seem to stretch and writhe, growing longer and more sinister with every step. You want to run, but your body feels frozen, as if the very air around you has paralyzed you, trapping you in place. Then, without warning, the figure stops just inches from you. Its presence is overwhelming, suffocating, the silence is deafening, and that's when you hear it. A voice, low and chilling, a whisper that sends a jolt of terror through your entire body. The words are incomprehensible at first, like an ancient language, but then you hear them clearly, echoing in your mind. Leave, before it's too late. The castle is not what it seems. The truth is buried deep within its walls, and those who seek it never leave. A rush of cold air washes over you, and for a moment you feel as if you're being pulled into the very shadows that surround you. You try to scream, but no sound escapes your lips. The figure's hooded face tilts slightly, as if studying you, as if it knows exactly what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanishes, dissolving into the shadows like smoke. The room seems to return to normal, the oppressive atmosphere lifting, but you know something has changed. You're no longer alone in the palace. The whispers, once faint and distant, now seem to surround you, pressing in from all sides. The walls pulse with a dark energy, and the air grows thick with the scent of decay. The temperature drops once more, and a chill runs through your spine as you realize that the figure wasn't the only thing waiting for you. You turn, desperate to leave, but the door you entered through has vanished. There is no exit, no way out. The palace has claimed you, as it has claimed so many others before you. The walls seem to close in on you again, the space growing tighter, more claustrophobic. The whispers grow louder, more frantic, as though the spirits within the castle are trying to warn you, to tell you the truth. But it's too late. You're trapped between midnight and every day of trusting yourself and praying together. In that moment, the castle reveals its true nature, a prison for souls, a place where time and space have no meaning, and where the spirits of those who dared to enter remain, trapped in eternal torment. You are one of them now, lost in the labyrinth of shadows, forever a part of the castle's dark legacy. And as the darkness closes in, the last thing you hear is the whisper of the figure, the same chilling voice, echoing in your mind, "There is no escape." The horror of Peena Palace will follow you for eternity. The mystery, the terror, and the shadows will never let you go. The castle will continue to haunt you, a place of endless darkness and malevolence, waiting for the next soul to stumble upon its cursed halls. And as you fade into the abyss, you know one thing for certain. The horrors of Peena Palace are eternal, and they will never be forgotten. And so the mystery remains unsolved, the terror continues, the palace waits.